Hello everyone, Jason Meyer here with Monday Morning Inspiration. Today I'd like to look at a Russian landscape painter, Ivan Shushkin, from 1832 to 1898. And I'd like to do something a little bit different here. So we're going to look at the same motif, Through the Woods, by the same painter in 4 different paintings. And I'd like for us to notice the differences between them, the differences first of all, in the feeling you get from them, or the feeling they portray, the mood. And then we'll get into some technical stuff and see if we can figure out why they feel that way. But we're going to start looking at these as just black and white in value. I've taken all the color out of them. We'll get to the full color images in a few minutes. But first, I really want to see the impact of the value. We want to see where the lightest part of the painting is. We'd be right up in here. So the sky would be the lightest. And then we would come in here. The dark tops of the trees. And we work our way back into dark. In this particular painting, is there a glow? It feels like there's a glow. And the lightest part of the sky is quite a bit lower, isn't it? And then we've got some light reflecting here in the water as well. In this painting, the foreground value is approaching the sky value much closer, isn't it? So there's a little bit more of a balance. The lightest part of this painting is going to be down here, behind these trees. Right, again with a little bit of reflection heading in here. So one thing I'd like you to notice about all of them is they all have darks. And to one extent or another, they all have lights. The distance between those vary. So let's pay attention to how dark and how light the painting gets. And then the other thing I'd like to pay attention to is how much of that dark versus how much of that light. So let's start with this one and work our way backwards before we get into the color images. So along the creek, we've got some nice darks and some little dark accents in the trees, and kind of right up at the center. But this one to me feels more light than dark. Not necessarily shadow, because this reads as shadow, but there's plenty of light bouncing around. This is a rather light feeling painting. Now in this painting, I see quite a bit more of our dark. The quantity of the dark, as far as space on the canvas, there's a lot more of it. But there's a lot more openness as well. What about the quantity of the dark against the light in this one? Is this a little bit cleaner? More of a singular light space than a bunch of light in between or at the top? And the light surrounded by the dark as well, which has a certain effect. And we're back to the first one. There seems to be plenty of dark, but the high-end light doesn't seem to be there. Right? This is the lightest thing in our painting, but this one's a tad bit moodier. We could call it grayer. So the high end isn't quite as high. What about space of dark? Right? There's a decent quantity, but really not as much as some of the other paintings, which is kind of interesting, because in a way this painting feels the darkest, I think. So as we look at all 4 of them together in color and black and white as little thumbnails, sometimes it's easier to pick up the overall impact of a painting viewing it small than seeing it really large. And then seeing black and white on bottom and color on top might give you a little more insight. I think we agreed that this seemed to kind of be the darkest, heaviest. It seems like the first and the third are almost in a tie with that. Although the light foreground and the light sky seems a little more hopeful for me. And there's a way to get through that forest. In here, it's a little darker up front. The sky's not quite as light, and there's no clear path ahead. Whereas on the number 2 and number 4, not only is there a path through, but there's light at the end of the journey. There's not necessarily a clean path in this one, but again, it's filled with light, and the shadows aren't so heavy themselves. The dark accents in the creek and a little bit on the trees, but even the trees and the ground are a lighter value in this than, say, in here or even in here. So now that we've been introduced to these paintings and seen what they offer, let's look at them in full color one at a time. So even though this is the darkest and the heaviest, the light and the colors have a very calming effect. And although the path disappears into mystery, it's more of a fog than a real heavy shadow. So there's a real psychological thing going on with the jump from what we can see, what we know, through what we don't know, what we can't see, until we get back to the known and the seen. For me, all good paintings have some degree of that mystery, of that unknown, of that unseen. And the really good painters, the masters, know full well how to paint the unseen. And this whole painting's framed in dark, but right down the center we can see the light. There's a clear, clean path into the opening, a beautiful, calm sunset. There's quite a bit of orange in color in the top of these trees. And then with the reflection and leaving some of this light and even letting some of this foreground tree not be quite so heavy, as well as let the sun shining completely through these trees, as opposed to some of the other forest where we can't see through. It brings a lighter day, a sense of clarity, a sense of ease. Yet we still have these spots of mystery in here. Just not quite the volume of it that we had in the last one. Here again, this is a very pleasant painting. Plenty of light to see around, a boat, a bridge, a meandering path through the woods. Obviously somebody's been here and cut logs. So a populated area. A path usually always implies activity, most of the time human activity. And we've got clarity up to this point, and then again, there's a bit of the unknown that we must travel through. Do you see that? There's no way for us to get through the sky without confronting this unknown. And the key is just enough, but not too much, where they can make it back into the known, to the comfortable, to the clarity. And we'll finish on this one, a lighter, in my opinion, more hopeful. Again, it doesn't mean there's no darks in here, but the volume of dark versus the volume of light versus the volume of color, or square inch, we could think when I say volume. Just how much of the canvas is covered in dark, how much in color, and how much in light. So we've looked at 4 paintings by the Russian landscape painter Ivan Shishkin, born 1832 until 1898. I'd like to leave you with one question as we leave today. We're going to begin 2020 studying triads, orange, green, and purple. And in these works that we look together, maybe go back and see if you see the triad. Do you see an orange, green, purple flavor in these? So could it be possible the same motif of the woodlands with the path or a creek or something running through in a similar color scheme, orange, purple, green, could get such vastly different moods? I think it's a credit to the artist that he was so versatile and produced such mastery of work at different levels, from light and airy to deep and mysterious and everything in between. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's look at a few paintings by Ivan Shishkin. That's all for me today. So for now, this is Jason Meyer signing off.